name is Bimbola Kolawole, and I'm the Business Development Manager for the African region at Rystad Energy. I'd like to start by welcoming you to the first of a 4-part Africa Regional Webinar Series for 2021. Before we kick things off, I'd like to quickly set the scene by introducing Rystad Energy. We are a global independent energy research and business intelligence company providing data, analytics, and advisory services to clients exposed to the energy industry. Rystad Energy has several different webinar series that runs as part of our frequent industry insights delivery that focuses on supply chain, renewables and power, oil and gas, commodity markets, and energy transition themes. If you're looking for content between webinars, we also offer various industry newsletters. You can find and sign up for these newsletters on our website. The African oil and gas industry has experienced a tremendous change due to several challenges, ranging from ongoing global efforts of energy transition with a race to meet the Paris Agreement Accord. It's important to also mention the shale revolution of 2014 to 15, which changed the game in the industry, and an important factor that has affected the world at large, COVID-19. Other above ground risk issues, such as regulatory framework, capacity building, and potential commercialization of national oil companies, has been a crucial topic, especially within the Nigerian oil and gas industry. Today, we are addressing the Nigerian petroleum industry bill conundrum and how other African national oil companies have fared so far with their regulatory framework for their oil and gas industry. Joining me today are industry experts to discuss this topic, and I'd like to start by introducing them. Per Magnus Nisvin, Senior Partner and Head of Analysis, Rystad Energy, Norway. Vena Ayukeba, Senior Vice President at the African Energy Chamber, South Africa. Dr. Adeoye Adefulu, Partner at Odujiri and Adefulu Law Firm, Nigeria. I'd like to inform our viewers and listeners, please send in your questions in the chat box and we will respond accordingly. I'm going to start with Adeoye. From initial conception in year 2000 to 2008, when the first draft of the Petroleum Industry Bill, which is widely referred to as the PIB, was submitted, how feasible do we think the bill eventually gets passed? And are there any indications that 2021 will be the final year for the reformation of the Nigerian petroleum industry?
Thank you, Bimbola. Thank you to you and to Rystad Energy for inviting me to talk about, well, my favorite topic, the Petroleum Industry Bill. I've had some would say the fortune or the misfortune, depending on who you're speaking to, of talking about this bill since 2008, when the first version was sent to the National Assembly. Prior to 2008, the process of reform kind of started in 2000. And I'm glad that we're taking an Africa theme in this discussion, but because you will see that from 2000, when the process started, 2008, and through to 2020, what you've had is a number of African countries which did not have any appreciable volume of oil and gas resources have since discovered oil and gas. And between their discovery and now, what many of them have done is put in place laws and reforms to ensure that their countries can maximize the benefits for the oil and gas industry, from the oil and gas industry. And so clearly there is a pressure from Nigeria to take advantage of the existing climate, change the narrative around the petroleum industry and the Petroleum Industry Bill, and put together a set of reforms that will work for the benefit of Nigeria. And that pressure is telling. 2021, what we have in 2021 is an alignment in government that the bill must be passed. And so we have the executive which has launched this initiative, and the National Assembly kind of working in tandem to ensure the passage of this bill. So my summary answer to your question is, I do expect that 2021 will see the passage of the bill. The government has said, both the executive and the Congress have said that it will pass by first quarter. That is not my expectation. I think that we should be looking at the second quarter of 2021. And the key thing now is not just whether the bill is passed, but that the bill is passed in a way that accommodates the serious issues that the country and the world really is facing at the moment. Over to you, Bimbola.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a very insightful, view from yourself. As you say, it's one of your favorite topics for sure. And I do know this because I know you also author the petroleumindustrybill.com. So it's very interesting to hear your views on this. But Magnus, do you have anything to add to this, please?
I can't say so much about the likelihood, but I can say something about the need. From outside, I have a feeling that the Nigerian people has been standing on the train station while the train has been passing by for the last almost 10 years. It is overdue now to catch the train. We might have one more oil price hike, maybe one more cycle. And if Nigeria is not able to monetize on that cycle, it is just another waste. So it's overdue. It is very much needed because Nigerians, you're sitting on one of the most proliferous and the most prospective petroleum basins in the world. Some places you can almost drill anywhere and you'll find something. Maybe you find deep gas in the end, but if you drill deep enough, you find something many places. It's very prospective. I think that over the last 10 years, or over the last 6-7 years, it has hardly been any discoveries. So it's overdue, it's very much needed, and it's urgent.
Thanks for your insight on that, Magnus. I'm sure Adeoye, of course, representing Nigeria and this panel, definitely will take this back to the team. Thank you for that, Magnus. Adeoye, I'm still going to get back to you on this. Next question, actually. There was barely any mention of the potential impact of energy transition, the global agenda in the PIB. Will this be looked into before the bill is finally passed and approved? How will the energy transition campaign affect the Nigerian petroleum industry?
So this is a really interesting question. I think that Nigeria has, over the years, been less concerned about renewable energy, the energy transition. COVID has brought that to the fore right now. What we see, even prior to COVID, we had seen countries announcing their desire to move from, sort of oil and gas resources to renewables. We've seen countries bring forward their plans to stop the purchase of cars that use fossil fuel. And there is an urgency, kind of as Magnus said. And the urgency is not just the urgency of fixing the oil and gas industry, but fixing it in a way that ensures that there is a future for it. And so what should Nigeria be looking at? Well, we should be looking at ensuring that there is an integrated planning for energy. We know that fuel is the major use of energy and has been the case across the world and in Nigeria as well. But that's going to change in the near future, certainly across the world. We need to make sure that resources like gas, which can be used as fuel, but also as feedstock, we expedite the use of those resources, particularly as feedstock. That means making sure that gas development initiatives, such as ensuring gas transportation is efficient, ensuring that gas pricing is not regulated in a way that disincentivizes gas development, ensuring that those things are there. But beyond fixing gas and fixing gas as a feedstock, we also need to work on integrated energy development. So across the sector, looking at how we can fix oil and gas development, how we can fix renewables, how we can work together and bring those together. I know that Nigeria is much more concerned now. Certainly, it has obligations under COP21, and it is thinking aggressively about that. But that thinking is not reflected in the petroleum industry bill. Perhaps the petroleum industry bill is not the best way or the best place to integrate that thinking. Perhaps it will be another piece of legislation or some government policy that talks about integrated energy thinking. We're yet to see that, but I do not think that, given the timeline that we're looking at, that there will be substantial changes that incorporate energy transition into the petroleum industry. But there can be, in other frameworks, in other settings, some discussion and some concrete policies around this.
Thank you very much, Adi. Thanks for that. Speaking of which, still very much looking into what this new, or what the PIB would be. I mean, I can't say new because it hasn't still been passed yet. Let's talk about transparency in resource allocation. So, as the Minister of Petroleum will be given full autonomy to grant licenses, is there a cause for concern here? I say this because this is the Norwegian model, which has worked efficiently. And from an African point of view, using Ghana as an example, the Ghana Exploration Bill states that the minister, in consultation with the Petroleum Commission, can grant exploration licenses to persons for 3 years and up to a maximum of 5 years, as seen in the Petroleum Act 919. Has Ghana been successful in implementing their Petroleum Act? I mean, you observe there are two questions in one here, in the sense that, you know, would there be a cause of concern if a Nigerian minister is given that full autonomy? Would you like to take this first, Adeoye, and then maybe Per Magnus can give us some insight into the Norwegian model and how they have been successful with theirs?
Thank you, Abibola. The petroleum industry bill is very interesting. I think what they try to do in the bill is to balance, shall I say, the political realities of Nigeria. The bill, since the bill was sent to the National Assembly in 2008, the major question has been, would there be discretionary powers of the minister or the president, in some cases, to grant licenses to prospective licensees? Under this iteration of the petroleum industry bill, what they've done is to try to find some kind of balance. So they've said principally the National Assembly the commission, which is supposed to be created, the Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, created under the petroleum industry bill, will have the power to issue tenders for licenses. But after going through that process of tenders and winning the tender with the Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, then they can make a recommendation to the minister, and the minister will decide whether to issue that license or not. To my mind, that is quite an inefficient process, because after going through the process of awards of licenses, etc., to then have a situation where the minister may or may not grant that license, I think that's inefficient. It is not dissimilar to the process under the Ghanaian regime, but in Ghana, the minister has the control of the tenders process, i.e., it's the minister that kind of issues the tenders, and they go through that process with the minister. Perhaps the commission in Ghana also works in the background, but it doesn't have the power to make recommendation as such to the minister. So would it be a cause for concern? I think there will be a cause for concern if you have a situation where an investor goes through the rigorous process of a tender and ultimately doesn't get that license awarded, and we don't know the reason other than the fact that the minister decided that it doesn't want to award the license to that person. So that would be a cause for concern. Has Ghana been successful? Well, Ghana has issued since the passage of its act, I think it was in 2016, and then it issued regulations which dealt with, specific rules around tenders and around direct negotiations as well. So Ghana's rules are very, very clear, and in my view, they seem to, they should be a pattern. Well, to the extent of the transparency of the process, not necessarily of the person that awards the license, I think it's a good model for Nigeria to think about. I would recommend to the National Assembly in the process of editing the bill that they consider this kind of dual side award process, i.e. going through the tender first at the commission and then having the minister grant that license when we don't know the process by which the minister will make the award.
Thank you. Thank you very much. But Magnus, can you give us an insight into how the Norwegian model has been successful so far?
Yeah, now the Norwegian model, it is, as you say, it is what we call a beauty contest. Every participant in bidding for a license, they don't bid in terms of money, they bid in terms of documentation and homework they have done. So the better they know the license, the more accurate they can be in describing potential prospects and seismics and what they want to do and which partner they have. Mostly it's a consortium. So it's they have to do very good homework, and then it's the minister has delegated the decision process to an expert directorate with very clear criteria. So this type of beauty contest has worked very nice, and also something interesting in Norway, we have two different processes. We have one process for the frontier exploration, and we had another process for the kind of licensing and exploration in mature areas. And these are two different rounds. So it works a little like the marginal fields in Nigeria, but here we are talking about license. And actually, these very dynamic licensing process for the mature areas has actually given rise to some of the largest discoveries. The Johan Sverdrup field, now already producing more than 300,000 barrels offshore, with potential to go to 500,000 barrels for an offshore field. It was discovered in a very mature area, just something like 20-30 meters away from where they had been drilling before. So I think that is a good lesson for Nigeria, that you have to be very dynamic, very active also in licensing in mature areas.
Thank you. Thank you, Per Magnus. And Venna has, of course, been waiting patiently. We need to get you busy right away, Venna. And I'm going to pose this question to you. We've been talking very much about Nigeria, and we did say the topic is not, just about Nigeria, but more like how the other African nations, other African NOCs are fared with their own regulations. So let's delve into Angola. The Angolan National Oil and Gas Agency, known as the ANGP, was launched in February 2019 with the core responsibility of acting as a national concessionaire of hydrocarbons in Angola, a role that was previously held by Senegal, the national oil company. There's a license bid round that is expected to commence this January, and bids are to be submitted by March this year, of course. This is a testament to the decentralization of the industry that had been held by Senegal for over 40 years. Can you tell us how the ANGP has been successful so far, albeit yet to have the first bid round process as a feather in their cap, Venna?
Okay. First of all, thank you very much to the Rystad team for inviting me to be part of this very, very experienced panel. It's been quite interesting to hear all what has been going on in Nigeria with the PIB and, of course, with Norway. We all look up to Norway and pretty much always hope at some point. I suspect that when are we going to get there? But it's important before I go to Angola for me to sort of talk a little bit about what you were talking about there with respect to the PIB and Nigeria, so I can sort of and this is one of the reasons why the chamber actually got formed, was that we did notice that it was difficult for our countries in Africa to be able to respond in real time or even next to real time to market realities. And so the question for us was, how do we help to spur investment? How do we help to drive change, or at least spur those who are in charge to be able to make the necessary changes for the industry? So since 2008, of course, when people started talking about a PIB bill, we've seen the shale revolution, we've seen the 2014 price crash, we've seen OPEC plus fights, we've seen Trump, we've seen the climate change and the climate transition. And you can imagine those are cycles which we've seen on and on and on. And we have a bill which we're still working on, in Nigeria, which we're still hoping to pass. And so for us, that just explains the difficulty. And it's not just Nigeria, let's be honest. It's a whole bunch of African countries. And we say we need to be able to change and to be able to move faster. Now, if we come to Angola in that sense, Angola certainly has its fair share of problems, which resulted in Senegal getting into significantly difficult waters. Now, one of the responses to that was the government coming in and saying, well, we need to take away the regulatory part of the industry away from Senegal and put it in a new agency. And this is now the ANPG, which has been in existence for over the past 3 years. I would say that it might be a little bit early to, to decide if at all it's a bummer or if at all they have been a success. However, I do think there are a number of things that we can point at, and it gives us a sense of whether this has been better in the moment, or this is something which the Angolans should have done. Personally, if you ask me on the onset, I think they made the right decision. If you look, for example, at the fact that they've had one bid round already successfully gone through, had some allocations to some of the majors. They're looking at a second bid round, and that is within the space of pretty much 2 years. They're having a second bid round, which you alluded to, Bimbola. In discussions which we've been having with them, there is a focus on the onshore, which has not been something which Angola has been looking at in the past. And so what they're trying to do is to expand the resource base and the activity base significantly. These are some of the things which Senegal typically would have said, yes, they want to do, but because of the multitude of things that they've had to focus on in the past, it certainly would have gone to the back burner. So what has happened with ANPG is that certain things which are extremely important to be able to focus on data acquisition, focus on new exploration, have come to the fore and are being pushed significantly. Another thing which I'd like to point to is the fact that Senegal has now been focusing significantly on a restructuring. I think this is one of the most important things that comes out of the fact that the government has been able to take away that regulatory piece. And what that has meant is Senegal has been expressly asked to restructure and to cut down from those activities which are not core activities, and to be able to focus on their core activities, including the reduction of costs and all sorts. And so I think one of the biggest beneficiaries of the agency coming into play and taking away the concessionaire role and the role of the regulator has been Sonangol itself, even though in some quarters people are talking about it having lost power. I think it's a good thing overall. Another thing I would like to bring to the fore in terms of assessing the ANPG has certainly been some of the key milestones which they've been able to achieve in this short period space of time. And that is around the extension and the renegotiation of existing blocks. So if you look, for example, in the last 12 months, we've had extensions with ExxonMobil on Block 15. We've had BP also, Total on Block 17. So those are extensions till 2028, I think. Chevron also comes into play. Now, it points to the fact that there is no too much dilly-dallying around. It is about getting it done and then moving to the next thing. It's extremely important, especially when we see that across the world, you know, there is competition. The majors are looking at Suriname these days. The majors are looking at Guyana. It's not as if the only place to get oil is Africa. The only place to get oil is Nigeria or Angola. So our countries in Africa need to be responding pretty fast to market realities to be able to compete. Competition is not African, it's global. And for that reason, I think that the ANPG has woken up and smelled the coffee and is trying to create the kind of environment. We now have, for example, risk service contracts, so not PSCs only. And what does that do? It gives a brighter, say, a brighter array of opportunities to be able to enter, depending on the way the majors or whoever comes in looks at that particular opportunity and their existing risk profile for that particular project. I think that's extremely important. If we look at gas, there's now new gas legislature to be able to take on board that local content. The view around local content is changing totally. It's no more about trying to give projects just to people on the ground. It's also about finding a way to empower those companies on the ground for them to be able to operate in some kind of a globally competitive manner, because everybody understands if you can't drop your break-even price in that sense, then there is no way anybody is going to invest, because guess what? They're going to move to Guyana or they're going to move anywhere. And if we are looking at the cycles, I really need to say this with respect to new developments that are coming on in Angola, offshore and also onshore. If you are looking at 7 to 10 year cycles in terms of new exploration and looking, and then you are looking at the constraints around climate change, the projected reductions of demand on oil in that sense, then certainly the amount of time which you are looking at as a major for you to be able to actually exploit a particular field is reducing significantly. That is the reality which nobody can change in terms of all the projections which I'm seeing with respect to global consumption cycles. And so if at all the ANPG is not responding in the way that they're responding, they're going to be problems, and not just them.
Wow, this is definitely, I'll say, very eye-opening, and I'm hoping our listeners they're taking down points and notes with what you've mentioned. Thank you very much for that, Vena. And you did talk about, gas. Speaking of which, I would like to take us straight into Mozambique while I still have your attention. So, with an estimate of over 1.9 trillion cubic meters, Mozambique is tipped to be the largest gas producer by 2040, according to Rystad Energy's upstream data. We see that Mozambique petroleum regulation also demonstrates a decentralization of operations. The Ministry of Natural Resources is responsible for directing and executing the governmental natural resource policies and supervision of the National Petroleum Institutes, the INP. Now, the INP has responsibility for administration and promotion of the petroleum operations i.e. performance from upstream all the way to downstream. Can you expatiate on how successful Mozambique has been with their plans towards becoming a world-leading LNG supplier, with their regulation playing a key role to this potential success? Venna still.
Yes, certainly. First of all, I need to give a little bit of a caution here before trying to assess the Mozambicans. The reality is that the importance of gas as a transition fuel is growing, by the day. However, what actually spurs projects these days are those global conditions, which are not just Mozambican. And so one has to be careful in terms of trying to evaluate the Mozambicans on the basis of what the projects are doing. I'll give you an example in terms of gas prices, oversupply in the market, the advent of shale, demand patterns around that. Those are all things, and even M&A activity around Anadaco and things that have been happening in terms of consolidation in the market. Now, those are overall things which are not in the hands of Mozambicans, but which have led to one delay or the other over the last decade in terms of the gas projects. That said, I do think that the Mozambicans have tried their very best in terms of bending over backwards to get this project going. And it has helped that they have initially tried to depoliticize the process by trying to make sure that INP sits on most of the technical decisions in that sense, together with ENH, of course, which is looking at the commercial side of things. That has been an attempt to depoliticize and take away a lot of the decision-making power from the ministry, which is what we've seen in Nigeria with respect to how the PIB is going. In terms of how I can say how successful that can be, I think it's important just to look at the projects and see where they are and see if at all they are being delayed for one reason or the other. And here, I think for Mozambique, it's important for me to bring the elephant in the room, which is security. Whilst none of those agencies, which are all governmental agencies, are in charge of security, the government overall is in charge of security, and that has led to concern and in a specific part with Total, a stop in work and significant delays. Now, from my discussions with Mozambican authorities, but also with some of the IOCs on the ground 1 week before Christmas, it is clear that those challenges in terms of security exist. However, the government is actively going out to try and figure out a way to deal with those. I don't think that there would be a long-term delay with respect to the project. It is going to continue being an ongoing problem, but I don't think that it's going to lead to long-term delays. I would leave it at that because I am not in the position to assess the government's military or whichever other solutions they are trying to. But my impression from all the planning and speaking to a number of the stakeholders was that they are unlikely to delay the projects long term the way they are. I think it also helps that these are to a large part offshore projects, and so they will be able to continue working offshore. Again, just to recap, the government is trying, everything in its power to make sure that the projects don't have any delays. ENH, I think initially there was a lot of problems or discussions or longer discussions than expected around local content or ENH participation and the financing around that. I think there is now a major agreements around that. And so we're seeing the ENI, for example, the Italians are they are on schedule with respect to all their plans. Total has had a stoppage, but it doesn't look like it's going to be a long-term stoppage. Of course, Exxon, due to what has been happening in the US, has pushed its final investment decision. But at some point, given market conditions, we expect them to come back on board. And so I think Mozambique is going to be more or less largely on track.
Fantastic. Good stuff. Thank you so much, Venna. Thank you. Very insightful. Thank you. Now, I'm going to toggle right back to Nigeria. And this question goes to Per Magnus. Per Magnus, do you see some break-even price impacts on the PIB versus the existing deep water production sharing contract terms?
Yes, indeed. There are three things that drives the value in a tax scheme. You have royalty, you have profit oil sharing, and you have the taxes on top of that. So if you look at each of these individually, you might have a kind of mixed feeling that something goes up and something goes down. But when we're talking about deep water, it definitely goes down the break-even prices, meaning that the oil companies will be more profitable than before. It's no doubt about it. And the break-even prices goes down, I would say, from $5 to up to $10 lower than before, with the oil prices that we are seeing now about around 50 to 60 going forward. So it's a significant improvement. We also have to realize that the taxation and the government take in Nigeria has been very high. It has also been very high in Norway, but we have been extremely stable. So I think that Nigeria can still continue to keep a relatively high government take if you just are successful by regulating and keep stability around it. So the PIB terms, it is better, significantly better than before. You will not be in the terms of world class in low government take, but that is not the goal either. I think that Nigeria, when it comes to maturity of the petroleum exploration, you are not mature yet. You might think you are mature because the last 10 years has been just very poor because of waiting for the PIBs, very little activity, no licensing, very little exploration. And the FPSOs deep water, they are falling off plateau. So by looking at the statistics, you might feel that it's a mature petroleum province, but it's not at all. It is in its youth still, I think. So the government terms that they are a little higher than like Guyana or extremely mature areas like UK, they have very low government take. But I think it's right. And when you are sitting negotiating on a table, then if nobody is really complaining, then you haven't reached the good terms. So I think it's you have found a good balance, and now it is time to just pass it and just accept the terms. That's my feeling.
Well, thank you for your thoughts on that, Per Magnus. Very much appreciated. Now, of course, we've been on for some time now, and I bet our listeners are having a field day and enjoying this conversation. Very insightful topic. But one last question that I'm going to throw to Adeoye, and of course, the rest of the panel can also, give their take on what they think about it. So Adeoye, again, because of your vast experience in the energy law space, and also what you have been doing within the PIBindustrybill.com, again, which you author, do you think the PIB is complex? Why has it taken over 12 years and it's still yet to become law? What exactly is going on? Tell us.
First, I'd like to say, thank you for the contributions from everybody else. It was really interesting to hear about how other parts of Africa, from Verna, have, dealt with their issues, and particularly, it's really interesting to hear that Angola, which has recently reformed, sort of the strides that it has taken. So it tells us the potential that we have if we put in good reformatory practices, if we pass a bill that actually does seek to reform, and we allow that bill to run properly. Because it's one thing to pass a bill, it's another thing to let it run properly. To answer your question directly, Bimbo, I think that there are many issues around the complexity. I for one, do not believe that we need to have a bill that covers the entire value chain in one document. We don't need to have a bill that deals with institutional reform, which is a really separate issue from fiscal issues or the regulatory issues that we have in the bill. I don't think we have to have one bill that addresses all of that. But, some people from the government have made an argument that we want this entire process. And I think that makes it a little bit complex. And complex not because of the content of the bill, but because we're dealing with a variety of stakeholders, a variety of issues that they need to address. And because of this, what then happens is if one person has an issue with, I don't know, institutional reform, for example, it may become a cog in the process of progress. And we are where we are now. There's no point in trying to talk about splitting up the bill. We've tried that before, it didn't work very well. So what should we do? So Per Magnus mentioned that we've tidied up many issues, that the investment profile or the fiscal profile of the PIB looks better. I know there's some people that will make an argument with you about that, but let's not deal with that. What we should do now is work towards ensuring that this bill is, whatever kinks or issues that we have in the bill are fixed very quickly, and that the bill is passed. And I think that there is certainly political will around that, and the industry kind of is in a position where let's make a decision one way or the other. And in many respects, although it sounds kind of fatalistic, but in many respects, if you make a decision, if you decide to go one way or the other, what you will see in a very short time is whether the investment community backs the decision, backs the route that you've gone. So it's not in their interests not to invest in Nigeria with the assets they have. Therefore, if the fiscal proposals are good and the other non-fiscal issues are able to be targeted and they're good as well, you will see investment, you will see FID in a short period of final investment decisions, FID, in a short period of time. If they're not, within a short period of time as well, you will know that those investments are not coming, and the opportunity to kind of fix the issues that you haven't fixed, you've still got that opportunity. So let's work very quickly to get the PIB on the road is what I would say.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Vena, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I think I just want to lead on from a number of the things which I said at the start, which is as when I look at African countries, I sort of I don't want to say I worry, but sometimes you need to try and figure out what some of the decision makers are thinking in that sense. In some places, they're pretty much on top of the game. Of course, it's always difficult because you have different political cycles that respond to other things rather than realities on the energy markets. We need to look at gas monetization, gas to power gas is increasingly becoming important, much more important than oil. And gas is a different game. It is all about having the infrastructure, but also being able to regulate the downstream side of it. So if at all you're, doing a pipeline from the Niger Delta right up to Kano, yes, what about the gas plants that are in Kano? What about electricity distribution? What about the pricing around that? It's not enough to talk about and even build the pipeline. It's also extremely important to make sure that on the downstream side you have everything ready so that you can make sure that it's monetized in the right manner to be able to create value at the end of the day. And so we need to be cognizant of that, else we start importing energy at some point from places which are in direct competition to ourselves in terms of our economies. And that, unfortunately, would be destructive for our energy industry. We at the Chamber do think energy is at the center of development. And so we need to try and find ways to have not only access to energy, but it needs to be affordable. And so as Africa looks at the whole transition discussion, we need to come together to be able to say, yes, we understand climate change. Yes, we do understand climate change is going on. Yes, we do understand we need to adjust and adapt, but we can't do that at the scale at which Norway is doing that. We don't have $1 trillion fund in Nigeria. And so we need to be able to move at a different pace, certainly at a pace that is realistic with the realities of what the world is doing. But we're certainly not going to sign on the same dotted line as the US, as the UK, and all of these other great countries are going to do, because we have African realities. We have 700 million people who don't have access to power. We need to think differently. And I just want us to always keep that in the back of our minds in terms of when we look at the industry. Let's not just think about ourselves or those who have access to energy, but those who can't speak for themselves and who don't have any access to energy. Thank you.
Thank you, Werner. That's a point that's definitely, as you say, we need to have it at the back of our mind. 700 million people with no access to energy. That's that's food for thought, and definitely something to key into. And Per Magnus, a final word from you on this same question.
No, I think that given the still very high resource base in Nigeria and the growing population, if you look some decades out in the future, Nigeria, you might have more than 500 million people, and economic growth will grow outside Lagos to all parts of the country. So gas is going to be a very important part of the energy source for Nigeria in many decades to come. But of course, you have to build this infrastructure with offering profits to the companies that are doing it. And maybe it is not that important to think that everything has to be exported in terms of LNG. That's one way to monetize it, but I think that you will benefit from your gas resources for many decades to come, also inside the country. Of course, in parallel, you have to build renewables, but gas will provide the cheapest guarantee that you will have continuous energy supply in Nigeria. I would say maybe for the entire century, actually.
Thank you, Per Magnus. Thank you. We could clearly go on for longer, but it looks like that's all the time we have today. Thank you all for listening in and joining us today. Within the next 24 hours, you will receive a recording link to replay this webinar. All Rystad Energy clients can also find the webinar link in our client portal. Per Magnus Nisvin, Werner Ayukeba, and Dr. Adeoye Adefulu, Thank you so much for your time today. We're very appreciative of your insights in this area of the industry and more. Thank you once again. With that, I wish you all a nice day. Goodbye.